Hi, I'm Kay Buckley, and I'd like to introduce you to my new Kay Buckley's Perfect Leaves. These leaves are cut from a heat-resistant plastic, so we're going to be able to work with them with a dry, medium heat setting on the iron. I selected the leaf that matched my pattern, or let me just say close enough, and then I placed it. I've done a little tiny bit of this ahead of time just so the video would go a little quicker. I traced it on the back of this fabric, and then I cut it out with a little bit under 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going on to my ironing surface. I have, again, the fabric you're looking at the back side. I repositioned the leaf on the back of my fabric. I am going to paint one side using my stencil brush. I apply sizing to one side of this. While the brush is in my hand, I am going to use it to lift the seam just to get it started. Coming in with my iron, I'm going to repeat dry medium heat, and I want to push about 1/3 of that seam up over onto the back. Give it about, I'm going to say 15 seconds of drying time, and I'm not pushing down on the iron, I'm just letting it sit in place. Then I'm going to go to the center third. I would like you to please note that the iron is positioned right on top of the seam allowance, not because it would hurt this leaf shape, but because it will allow me to get a very nice smooth edge when I'm finished. If I come in with the iron and push in too far when I'm out on these seams, it creates little points out on the curve. And then I'm going to lift, and if you will note please, on side one, when you are finished, we did it in thirds, and the seam on both ends is flipped over, so there's a folded seam allowance all the way out to the raw edge, and that is what's going to help to get us a nice sharp point in the final process. I have to turn it, and then I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to paint some sizing onto side two, but you only want to paint where you have a single layer of fabric. Don't get it really wet out here where these are nicely folded. And then use the brush again, and I'm coming in and I'm going to push about 1/3 of that seam up over onto the back, let the iron sit. And one of the things I'd like to repeat is I am using sizing. I find I like it much better than starch. I was having some issues where the starch was leaving cakey residue and some additional stiffness in the fabric that I didn't like. And so we're letting it sit here for, again, a few seconds. We need it to dry. And then I'm going to hit the final third on the second side and let the iron sit in place until this dries. So that's the key. We've got to let the iron sit until it dries. But we're looking at a medium heat because what we risk is if our iron setting is too high, it can warp these templates. So they need a medium dry heat. And then I'm going to pull the iron away and we're going to take a look. If we've done this correctly, we should have what I refer to as a bit of a tail that sticks out here on these points. Can you see that? And then I'm going to grab my stencil brush and let me just turn just a bit, make sure you can still see it. And I'm going to hold on right here where these seams cross each other. I need a little pressure in this spot. And I'm going to moisten this tail with a little bit of sizing. And then I am going to take that little tail and just fold it in on top of itself. So just roll it over and then bring the iron, quick movement, iron in and get your finger out of there. And you're going to let the iron sit for, again, about 10 to 15 seconds until that dries. Initially, I tried cutting some of this fabric away, and I was not satisfied with my results. I found by leaving the fabric in, I had a much more satisfactory result. And then, again, I'm going to hold on, put a little moisture out here on the tail. I'm going to drop my brush, and I'm now going to fold that in on top of itself. Bring the iron over, give it a couple of seconds to dry. And then I'm going to pull the iron away. So one of the first things I always like to do is I like to flip it onto the right side. And what I'm doing is just double checking to make sure that I'm satisfied. If for any reason I didn't have a really smooth edge here, sometimes the iron can pick the fabric up in a little weird way and kind of create a little pleat in there. If you got a pleat on the back of this fabric seam allowance, the odds are that that created a little point over here. And all you would do is moisten it, flip it onto the back. You would moisten it with a little bit of sizing, and then you could fix it. And I'm not kidding, within less than 20 seconds it can be fixed. But it's easier to do that repair while this template is still on the inside. But I am completely satisfied with the way this looks. So I'm going to reach, I tend to come in to the side, and then I'll kind of just lightly pinch my points. And they'll just pop right off. Then I have this template to reuse forever and ever. And I'm going to flip this down. And I do not repress this. I find I like to just position it on the background fabric. And I do this process for both hand and machine applique. And it works beautifully, and it gives me nice smooth edges and beautifully sharp points. One little tip I'd like to share, if you find that when you're ironing with these perfect leaves that the leaf template is slipping on you a little bit, some people have no trouble with that at all, and some people have trouble with it sliding. So if you have any trouble, I'd like to suggest a simple solution. If you take a small little piece of painter's tape and I rolled it so that the sticky side is out, and I put it on the back of my leaf like that, now when I place it on the back of the fabric and then go to do my ironing, the leaf will not move at all. So if you were having any trouble with slippage, this would be your solution.